Hello and welcome. You watching Global Lens on Newsline Live with me, Neha Khanna. Here's wishing all our viewers a very happy Diwali. And our big focus on Global Lens continues to be on the US presidential election. Is America having a panic attack over its US presidential election that's now just days away? The Wall Street Journal seems to think so. The famed American financial newspaper says there is palpable anxiety among Americans ahead of election day, and voters fear that permanent damage will be caused to the country if their candidate loses the election. One woman has been quoted as saying there are not enough gummies she can take to soothe her angst. 46-year-old Rebecca Williams, a resident of Atlanta, told the newspaper, and I quote, "I'm honestly, legit, kind of terrified." She says she's pro-science, pro-choice, pro-wrestling, and the very thought of trying to get through the next few days until the election has her on edge, not to mention what might happen afterwards. To get through it, she said she was counting on a lot of marijuana. With just days to go in what could be the closest presidential election in American history, the entire country seems to be nervous and stressed out. Voters on both sides say they are paralyzed with suspense and fear over what is coming next. The candidates have amped up their appeals to an apocalyptic degree as the campaigns frantically work to get Americans to come out and vote. In fact, many voters say this election feels different than those that came before. Less of a regular democratic exercise and more of a national panic attack and a twilight clash that could end democracy for good. That's the degree of fear and paranoia that's evident among voters in this election. One voter said, "I can remember elections when it felt like things would be okay regardless of the outcome. That feeling is absent this time." Another one said, "I definitely feel anxious. While there's also hope for what's going to happen, it just feels like it could go either way, and that's obviously scary." One voter said, "There is no good choice on so many levels, but especially in the presidential race. It's terrifying to me." The angst is widespread across the political spectrum. In a Wall Street Journal poll released last week, 87% of voters said they believe America will suffer permanent damage if their candidate loses. Among Harris's voters, 57% said they would feel frightened if Trump is elected, while 47% of Trump voters said they would feel frightened if Harris wins. At least half of the voters said they think violence is likely regardless of who wins, and 53% say America's divisions will keep growing irrespective of the election's outcome. The same poll found Trump narrowly ahead within the margin of error, essentially a tie, similar to the results of numerous other recent national and swing state polls. Even the famous polling guru Nate Silver, who rose to fame after predicting the outcome of elections, says he cannot predict which way this one will go, though his gut says Donald Trump. It is anybody's guess who will get elected to the White House, and the deep divisions in American society, coupled with a tense and unstable stalemate, are triggering panic and paranoia across the country. Believe it or not, such is the level of anxiety that multiple articles and listicles have been published in recent days telling Americans how to manage their election stress. And let's not forget, what we've seen in this US election cycle is unprecedented hate, anger, divisiveness, bigotry, racism, xenophobia, and sexism. Trump and his supporters have taken shrill rhetoric to a whole new level with their invective against immigrants. The former US president is unapologetically tying his bid to win a second White House term to the strong anti-immigrant sentiment prevalent in large parts of the country. However, his tirade and that of his supporters is not confined to simply opposing illegal immigration. It's now an unabashed, bitter, racist and xenophobic outburst aimed at instilling a strong anti-immigrant fear in Americans. While addressing a massive rally at New York's Madison Square Garden on Sunday, Trump doubled down on his promise for a massive deportation program on day one of his new term to reverse what he described as an immigrant invasion into the United States. Kamala Harris has called Trump an unhinged, unstable fascist and a wannabe tyrant who admires Hitler. Some analysts say Trump's Sunday rant qualifies as possibly the most vitriolic campaign speech in modern US history. Trump said the United States is an occupied country, and before the Republican presidential nominee spoke, some of his top supporters hurled extremely racist and vulgar rhetoric. Former congressional candidate David Rem called Kamala Harris the Antichrist and the devil, while others lashed out at Hillary Clinton, calling her unprintable names, undocumented immigrants, even homeless people. Comedian Tony Hinchcliffe called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. The next day, Trump said, "I'm not a Nazi, I'm the opposite of a Nazi." Fact is, Trump's repeated anti-immigrant rhetoric has sought to instill a deep fear in the hearts and minds of the American people and to pit one section of the country against another. He has often called immigrants murderers, saying it's in their genes. Remember that moment that launched 1,000 memes on social media when Trump sounded completely unhinged as he described immigrants from Haiti as people who were eating the cats and dogs of Americans? Or when he said that immigrants were poisoning the blood of America, repeatedly framing the argument using divisive words such as us and them. You would recall how Trump's running mate J.D. Vance, also infamous for his anti-immigrant rhetoric, launched into a deeply sexist, misogynistic and offensive tirade against Kamala Harris by making a reference to women he described as childless cat ladies. That comment sparked as much outrage as it did ridicule and derision. Even pop icon Taylor Swift came out in support of Kamala Harris by posting a picture of herself with a cat. Later, when she formally endorsed Harris, she signed off her letter with the words, "Childless cat lady." Trump has also painted a target on the back of his political opponents by referring to them as America's enemy within. Ironically, Trump accused Democrats of unleashing violence on him following 2 assassination attempts on him earlier this year. The question we're asking on Global Lens tonight is this: are American voters going to decide whom to vote for on election day based on issues pertaining to the economy, jobs, price rise, immigration and abortion? Or are hate, divisiveness, the othering of a certain demographic and crippling fear and fear-mongering driving this election? Another question being asked is this: will the US see a smooth transfer of power? Or could there in fact be chaos and possibly violence after the election? Is this election the toughest test yet for American democracy? And are Americans actually having a collective panic attack ahead of election day?